Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Fox with WESH 2 News and WESH.com, and this is another in our series of debates leading up to the November general election. We hope everybody is registered and gets out and votes. We are right now homing in on the District 36 State House race, and this area covers part of Seminole County, including Sanford, Lake Mary, Longwood, Winter Springs, and Geneva. And the candidates are Republican Rachel Plaikin and Democrat Deborah Pulalian. First of all, thank you both for joining us today. We'll get to know you a lot better in the next 30 minutes. I'll give you each 1 minute to tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and why you think voters in District 36 should vote for you. Ms. Plaikin, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Greg. Well, my name is Rachel Plaikin. I'm running for the Florida House. I'm a wife, a mom, and I've helped my community throughout my life by serving a nonprofit. I have over 18 years of real estate business experience, and I plan to utilize common sense business principles to help combat the crises caused by failed Democrat policies that my opponent supports. Thank you for having me here today.
All right, 1 minute, Ms. Pulalian.
Thank you. So my name is Deborah Pulalian. I am a moderate Democrat running for Florida House District 36. I want Florida to be a place where my two sons and the next generation can prosper and keep their freedoms. I want them to have the freedom to decide when to start a family, the freedom to love who they love, the freedom to enjoy clean air and clean water, and the freedom to have a public education that helps everyone succeed. Right now, Florida is going backwards, not forward. I can't sit on the sidelines and watch it happen. I'm asking for your vote so that I can represent the common sense values of House District 36 in Tallahassee. So I'm asking you to also visit my website, votefordeb.com, to learn more about me. Thank you.
All right, very good. And thank you for clearing that up on my pronunciation. Pulalian. Okay, very good. We'll stick with Ms. Pulalian on this first question. You find out a lot about people's priorities in the bills that they file, and I'd like to know first, what is your very first bill that you would file?
Well, the first bill I'd like to file is related to public education. So it's been widely reported that Florida ranks 48th in average teacher pay. And so they have bumped the pay for new teachers, but for our veteran teachers, we're seeing people with 10 years of experience now getting the same pay as someone who just graduated from college and entered the profession. And we need to make it right. We need to make it full. So I'd like to propose a bill that would reward teachers for their years of service in Florida. Teachers and educators.
Okay. All right, very good. Ms. Plaikin, 1 minute, well, everybody's got basically a minute for their answers here, but yes, what would be the first bill you would file?
Well, we have an inflation crisis right now in the United States, and we're feeling it in Florida. So I would like to see a gas tax break to give immediate relief to Floridians.
And how long would this last? Because right now we have a gas tax break that the governor called for in his budget that begins in October.
That's right. I'd like to see one that's permanent, though.
Oh, permanent. Okay.
Absolutely.
How would we make up those funds in building and maintaining our roads?
Well, right now we've got $22 billion surplus. It's a record surplus. So we've got the money to do it.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about gun violence and gun laws right now. In 2018, after the Parkland massacre in South Florida, there were a number of measures passed and signed into law by then Governor Rick Scott. Among them, a red flag law that's been used 8,000 times to remove firearms from the homes and possession of people who are a threat to themselves or to others. I want to find out if you would repeal any portion of that law, including the one that raised the age to 21 to buy long guns, or whether you would add to that law in some fashion. Ms. Plaikin.
Well, I think what you're referring to is risk protection orders. And I think that what we need is a little more constitution in that, protecting people's due process. However, I do believe that we also need to have some sort of provision in place for people who are extremists, for people who are making threats in order to protect the public. People who are making threats should not have access to their firearms until they are in a better place mentally.
Okay, Ms. Pulalian, what do you think about the laws that were passed, and would you add or file any bills that would add new gun restrictions in Florida?
I think the red flag laws were very appropriate. And I would like to say something I would not support, which is permitless open carry. I think that's a recipe for disaster. It always makes me think of Trayvon Martin and how many more Trayvon Martins we could have if we have self-styled vigilantes with their guns on their hips. And I've seen that memorial in Stanford. It breaks my heart. So I would not support that for guns. And I do want to say that guns have a good place in society for personal protection, for hunting, for sporting. I have a lot of friends who have concealed carry permits because they're single women and they need it for protection. But it is appropriate to make sure that we find ways to reduce gun violence in our society. Thank you.
And you brought up something, and I'd like to go back to Ms. Plaken for a moment. What are your thoughts on constitutional carry? The governor has said if it crosses his desk, he would sign it.
Well, I'm for constitutional carry. You look at states like Alabama, you don't really notice people carrying any personal protection devices, as I like to call them. It's a defense. It's for personal protection, and it's not something that would be disruptive in the lives of anyone.
Okay. Right now, a 15-week abortion ban is in effect in Florida. A Florida judge has ruled it unconstitutional, and the state Supreme Court will ultimately decide this. But this could be a long legal battle. What are each of you planning to do? Perhaps a bill to address abortion rights. Ms. Poulalian, we'll start with you.
Well, I believe fully that women need to be able to decide for themselves what happens to their bodies. I support a woman's right to choose. I support reproductive freedom, and that also means contraception. And I think one of the really disturbing things about what happened the same year as a 15-week ban is the governor vetoed long-term contraceptives for low-income women. So not only are we making it harder to make your choice about continuing a pregnancy, making it harder to avoid that pregnancy. So it's a violation of privacy. This is a private medical decision. I think our Constitution protects that.
All right, Ms. Plaken, your thoughts on the 15-week abortion ban, and if you are elected and sent to Tallahassee, would you file or support a bill that would even take it less, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, in some regard, or eliminate it entirely?
Well, I support the bill, Greg. I believe all innocent life should be protected from conception until natural death.
Okay, and so in every circumstance, can you be more specific in cases of rape, incest, threat to the mother's life, that sort of thing? Can you tell me where you are in that spectrum?
If those exceptions are in a bill, then I'm voting for it. If it's a bill that saves lives, absolutely.
Okay. I want to talk now about Governor DeSantis and some comments he's making more frequently. For example, he says we need to defend against the left with the, quote, full armor of God. This is part of a larger Christian nationalism movement that critics, including Jewish and other religious leaders, have condemned, saying it inspires hate and violence. Ms. Plaken, do you support this kind of message from the governor?
Well, if you're asking, should the governor be quoting scripture, a lot of people in Florida believe in the Bible. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. And, what we should be talking about is Charlie Crist referring to our governor, our duly elected governor, as de-Satan. If anything's inciting violence, it's Charlie Crist.
Ms. Poulalian.
Thank you for that question. You were asking about Christian nationalism, and I think it is incredibly, something along those lines. It's incredibly sad to see religion being used to manipulate people and to justify extremism. And the quote from Mr. DeSantis was about, put on the full armor of God to stand against the wiles of the liberals. Well, the real word right there was devil. And the real context of the Bible is that you are trying to do good in the world. And there are forces that try to prevent you from doing that. And I also think about James 2:8 that says, love your neighbor as yourself. And all the many examples in the Bible of how we care for the people around us. That's what I would like to see people talk about when they talk about their faith. And also, I think one of the great things about the United States is the freedom to practice religion or to not practice religion without interference from the government. And nobody should be able to force you into their beliefs.
Thank you both. District 36 is pretty evenly split between Republicans and Democrats and independents. Speak to the independents for a moment, assuming you draw most of the electorate from your respective parties. Talk to the independents here. How would you act and vote differently than your leadership in your respective parties if you're elected and sent to Tallahassee? Ms. Palalian.
So I have a good friend who's already in office in Tallahassee, and she said, it's not that hard to figure out how you vote. If a bill does something good for Florida, you say yes. If it does something good, but it has something in it that's so bad you can't support it, you say no. And so that's not really a party decision. It's a decision about what's good for Florida.
Ms. Blaken, how might you be different from leadership in the Republican Party?
Well, I believe, when you get to Tallahassee, you do have to work as a team. Now, if leadership ever went against my principles or my values, I absolutely would stand alone, and I'm not afraid to stand alone. But at the same time, you got to, if they're not going against your principles or your values, then coming together as a team, you can move really good legislation through more effectively.
All right, let's talk about some of the new laws that we've seen passed in the last 12 months. We've seen new laws that prohibit teaching critical race theory, prohibit the teaching of sexuality and gender identity in kindergarten through third grade, the Woke Act that may have businesses foregoing some diversity training or rethinking it, and schools not teaching about the history of race in some respect or some regard in our country. Ms. Palalian, many parents support these measures. Do you? And why or why not?
So it's a good question. It's a really big question. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my father. So my father came from communist Hungary when he was 19 years old. He escaped. That's what we called it back then. And so I grew up in a household where we had a steady stream of people escaping from communist countries. And they always talked about how their thoughts were being controlled, their information was being controlled. They feared, his parents were afraid of him because when he went to school, he might turn him in for something. And when I read these bills, and I have read through them, I see control. I see dictatorship. I see trying to stop free thought and free thinking. Some of these things are restricting what we can do in colleges and higher education. So I understand that parents want to be involved in their schooling and understand what their children are learning at school. But this has gone way, way beyond that.
Ms. Blaken, do you support all of these measures? And if so, why?
Well, I'll start with the Stop Woke Act that you mentioned. That act actually prevents discrimination in schools and in the workplace. I'm reminded of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he wanted his 4 children to be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. So I absolutely agree with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on that one. And I think the other bill you referred to was, did you say Don't Say Gay?
The Parental Rights and Education Act, correct? Yes.
The parental, yeah, that's the correct name for it. Parental Rights and Education Bill. I absolutely agree with that as well, because kindergartners through third grade should not be indoctrinated. They should not be taught about sexual identity or any of that. They should be focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Deeper conversations can be had by their parents. Parents have a fundamental right to the care and upbringing of their own children, and they should be the ones that have the right to talk to their children about those subjects.
Ms. Palalian, I want to go back to you for a second here. I mean, she brings up a point. While there are a lot of things that are discussed in a college classroom or even a high school classroom, do you agree with that portion of the Parental Rights and Education Act when it comes to very young children, K through 3?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that more. So there was no, gender curriculum in K through 3. So this may have, and parents always had the opportunity to find out what was going on in their classrooms. But what it does, so there was no clear problem to fix. But what it does do is make people wonder, what am I going to get in trouble for? If I'm a gay teacher and I have a picture of my wife or husband on my desk. Is this going to be a problem? Is this indoctrination of a child K-3? What if it's parent day and the two dads come and one of the little children asks about it? You know, it's not solving a problem in an appropriate way.
So I'm going to go back to Ms. Plakin for 30 seconds to wrap up this part of the discussion. Is that a fair assessment? Should teachers be worried in classrooms if they have their same-sex partners or husbands or wives picture on the desk and students come up and start asking about it? Is that going to be a problem?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you look at the actual bill, none of that is in there. It is perfectly fine, even for a child to go up to the teacher and ask them about their own two dads or two moms. So none of that is in the bill. It has to do with the actual curriculum in the bill, in the classroom.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to, the fact Seminole County is one of those sprawling communities where people go. They like to live in Seminole County, but it's also becoming much more expensive, and not just there, but in other parts of Central Florida. The average rent this year is more than $1,600 a month. How would you make housing more affordable, Ms. Palalian?
So Florida helped to create its housing crisis by raiding the Sadowski Fund for 19 years. So the last legislature passed a bill to stop raiding it. Also passed, and part of that bill was to take away half its funding. So we had this huge problem, started to fix it, and then pulled back. But we do need to see that functioning fully and properly in Florida. And I want to see changes at the local level. I don't want to just know it's something that, money is coming to Seminole County. I want to see the changes, because when I go knocking door to door in Sanford, I see the empty lots in our historic Black neighborhoods. I see the houses they're rotting away. And that's what this fund is supposed to address. I want to see it in Seminole County.
Ms. Plakin, how would you tackle housing affordability in Seminole County? And if you can address the Sadowski Housing Fund, would you in any regard vote to reduce that allotment of money or sweep it into another part of the budget?
I support the Sadowski Fund. I think we should continue to support it and to fund it. I believe in an emphasis on home ownership, and that element is in there, which I'm really glad about. And I also think we have a housing shortage in our state. Prices have leveled off, and in some cases have dropped a little bit as of recently, but we still need more housing. And a lot of this is regulation being tied up at the local level. We also have impact fees charged to developers at the local level that are just going up and up. So we need to think about these things, and that would actually help us get more housing more quickly.
So you brought up impact fees. I'm curious, would you support a measure in Tallahassee to limit or cap the amount of impact fees that can go up a year in counties across Florida?
Yes, because those fees get passed on to the consumer, the buyer.
Ms. Palalian, what do you think about that? And what would you do as it regards any measure that comes up to limit the increase in impact fees?
Well, I was on the Seminole County Advisory Board for the impact fees. Seminole County sat on their hands and did not raise impact fees for, it was about 15 to 20 years, when they were supposed to be doing it incrementally. We finally got to a point where budget-wise, they had to make the change. And they were faced with some really severe restrictions from Tallahassee to be able to do that. So it kind of brings us to home rule as well. Local counties and cities need to be able to make the decisions for themselves. And Seminole County was able to raise their impact fees as needed because they were way below the rest of the counties around us. And we are having, plenty of development. Our wonderful schools bring the people in. But what happens is when the developers don't pay their impact fees, the rest of us do, I promise, in our taxes. So they're getting paid, just not by the people who are making the money off the development.
As we are concerned about housing affordability, there's also the fact that Seminole County is one of the richest in natural resources. People live in Seminole County because they like it. It's beautiful, a lot of parks, the Wekiva River Basin. Ms. Plakin, what exactly, maybe in a bill that you would file, would you do to ensure the protection of those natural resources in the county?
Well, I would make sure they're properly funded. That's probably the main thing that we need to do.
Can you tell me more? In what way?
Well, I'm not sure what you're actually asking.
Well, I'm interested in whether you have a plan to protect the natural and environmental treasure that is Seminole County, so that it remains a place that doesn't just get paved over time for new housing, but is in fact the place where people want to live.
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you look at the rural boundary, that's a place where we have to protect. Actually spend more time there than probably all of my opponents combined, and have lunches on a regular basis with a group of veterans on Wednesdays, and walk around the Geneva General Store, and I got to know a lot of people. And what I keep hearing over and over is they do want to protect that area. So I wholeheartedly support that. Now, as far as the specific legislation, that remains to be seen, but any legislation that comes up that protects the rural boundary and our natural resources, I'm in, as long as I have to read the bill, but I definitely would be very interested, because I want to protect them.
Okay, Ms. Palalian.
Thank you for that question. There have been some significant attacks against the ability of Seminole County to keep its rural boundary and protect those lands from excessive development. And one of those came from Chris Dorworth trying to build Rivercross. And as has been discussed before, Mr. Dorworth and Rebecca Dorworth contributed to Rachel Plakin's campaign in May 2021, $1,000 each. So it's important to kind of draw, I think, a separation between those folks and people in legislature. I don't think that's appropriate connection there. As far as what we can do to make sure that Seminole County's rural boundaries stays intact, is we protect home rule, which is we don't pass laws in Tallahassee that prevent counties and cities from doing their own government. That is number one. And there were attempts to do that during the past fight with Rivercross, where they tried to say that for 1 mile around a public university, you were required to do development, and it would override any rules set in place by the county. That was a direct attack against Seminole County being able to make its own decisions.
All right, Ms. Plakin, courtesy of your opponent, you get 45 seconds.
Well, she brought up $2,000 in donations, and I have over 400 donors. I have raised over $300,000. So 2,000 is really not that significant. And as I stated before, I've spent more time in the rural boundary than probably all of my opponents combined. It's because someone buys into my agenda and what I'm doing doesn't mean that I buy into everything that they're doing.
Okay, for the record, do you oppose the Rivercross development that Mr. Dorworth was proposing?
I do. I support protecting the rural boundary.
All right, very good. During a May special session, lawmakers passed measures to try and stabilize skyrocketing homeowners insurance, providing more reinsurance for companies to keep them in the state, money to harden homes with new doors and windows, and allowing them to keep their insurance if they have homes with older roofs that do pass inspections. But even lawmakers admit rates might not go down for years, if at all. So this is going to be a problem that's going to be revisited here. Ms. Palalian, what do we do about it? What's the answer here?
I think the fact that they've passed a bill that they're not sure is going to work means that it's not an easy answer. I am a research analyst. I work full-time in that area. And I would say that the most important thing is to really research the solution. I'm not going to guess at one right now. I'm going to tell you that it's something that the legislature should focus on instead of passing some of these other bills that don't actually help people. They just seem to make some sort of political statement. So I think it needs to be a focus.
Okay, so Ms. Plakin, in the special session, they added to reinsurance to try to shore up companies who are here so they aren't dropping policies and going bankrupt. What's the next step? What do you think is the solution?
Well, this is an ongoing problem. Around 80% of all US litigation against homeowners insurance happens in Florida, and that's nationally. So that's pretty significant. We have some scams going on as far as roofing goes. We have roofing contractors and trial lawyers. And there's great contractors and great lawyers out there, but there's a few that scam and are coming in and saying that people need new roofs when they don't, and they're suing the insurance company, and the insurance company has to settle. So the special session and the bill that was passed by the legislature, it addressed a number of these things. And so I think we should wait and see how that plays out. And then between now and next session, we'll see where the gaps are. And we absolutely need to fill them. We need to keep working on this problem because it's a very significant problem. And this is also contributing to the lack of affordability in our state.
All right, we've come to the end of our time. It moves quickly. I'll give you each 1 minute to close. We'll begin with Ms. Palalian.
Thank you. So I'll just say again, my name is Deborah Palalian. I'm a moderate Democrat running for Florida House District 36. I'm a single woman. I work hard to make a living. I work full-time as a data analyst. I will tell you honestly, I never met a spreadsheet I didn't love. I've been very involved in local issues that impact Seminole County. I've been on city and county boards. I'm running for office because I don't like extremism. I'm tired of grandstanding, and I'm tired of actually the political corruption we've seen in Seminole County. And what I think we need now is leaders who will be honest and bold in addressing the economic needs of everyday Floridians. I'm ready to be that person. I'm asking for you to vote for me by November 8th. Please look me up at votefordeb.com. And I thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. 1 minute, Ms. Plakin.
Well, families across our community and across the nation are struggling right now under the failed Democrat policies of the Biden administration. And on November 8th, you have a choice: more of the same pain at the pump, higher tax policy, and radical ideas that got us here that my opponent supports, or vote for me, Rachel Plakin. I will utilize my 18 years of business experience to find real solutions to the inflation crisis. We're feeling it even here in Florida. I'm going to insulate Florida from failed Washington policies, and together we can help keep the cost of living affordable and increase the quality of life here in Seminole County. Thank you.
All right, you did mention your opponent. You get 45 more seconds, Ms. Palalian, before we close.
I didn't mention her by name. I just mentioned opponent.
Well, there's only one opponent. Earlier you mentioned opponents, so I didn't give her 45 seconds because you could have been referring to your primary opponents, but in your close, you did refer to the only opponent you have now. You get 45 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think what I'd like to talk about is inflation in my 45 seconds. And, one of the things that may happen as we move through these economic times is more unemployment. And if you remember how difficult it was for people to apply for unemployment benefits, the broken computer systems, the appallingly low amount of money you could get as assistance, that needs to be addressed. The issue came out with COVID, but it was there all along. It's unfair and it's cruel. I saw it personally in my own household and with good friends who in the middle of the night were trying to figure out how to log on to a computer system and were rebuffed for months. So in closing again, my name is Deborah Palalian, moderate Democrat running for Seminole County.
All right, thank you both. We come to the end of our time here now. This has been a debate in the State House District 36 race in Seminole County. Of course, the election is November 8th. Early voting will start soon. Mail ballots will go out soon. We thank you for watching. This is WESH 2 News and WESH.com.